The forest smelled like static and wet iron, not trees and dirt. No, that would have been comforting. This place, whatever planet it was, had its own ideas about what a forest should be. The trunks around me rose like twisted antennae, branching into spirals that pulsed with faint, organic light. The leaves dripped a bioluminescent ooze that looked suspiciously like ectoplasm from a bad horror sim. And the mist? The mist whispered. I didn't have the energy to argue with it. Not after crash landing from low orbit in a glorified metal coffin designed by the lowest bidder. The wreckage of my ship, well, escape pod technically, still smoked somewhere behind me, half-eaten by acidic foliage that seemed genuinely offended by technology. Every part of me hurt, not in the poetic, soul-searching way. In the, I have shrapnel in my spleen and probably half a tree lodged in my thigh way. My left boot was gone. Just gone. Vaporized, maybe. Or stolen by one of the local wildlife. Probably something adorable and venomous. That was the vibe here. I dragged myself forward, inch by painful inch, fingers clawing at roots and mud that felt faintly alive. My breath came in wet gasps, and I could feel my body getting colder despite the planet's humidity. That's when I knew I was in real trouble, when the sweating stopped. So this was it. Not exactly the glorious end I'd imagined for myself. I always figured I'd go down in a blaze of something. Gunfire, rebellion, drunken karaoke. But not here. Not choking on alien pollen and being judged by judgmental trees. Great, I croaked, collapsing against a glowing root that pulsed like a lazy heartbeat. This is fine. Totally fine. Just need a nap. A little medical grade dying. The mist curled tighter around me, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement. Not the usual twitching of oversized insects or that weird cube-shaped bird I'd hallucinated an hour ago. No, this was different. A silhouette. Humanoid. Tall. Graceful. I blinked, hard, tried to focus, but everything was fuzzy and slow. Still, the shape moved closer. I tried to reach for my sidearm, but my arm flopped uselessly, like a fish on land. I settled for glaring at the figure as it knelt beside me. Eyes, huge, golden-ringed, impossibly dark. Skin that shimmered faintly, like starlight filtered through a prism. Hair like liquid silver, spilling down over long, curved ears. Ears too long, too pointed to be human. But otherwise, she looked like a woman, a very annoyed woman. "Don't move," she said, voice like wind chimes wrapped in sarcasm. "You'll only make yourself uglier." I opened my mouth to offer a witty retort, something clever and full of roguish charm. What came out was mostly blood and a gurgle. Charming indeed. She leaned closer, inspecting my injuries with an expression of mild curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. I got the feeling she wasn't exactly thrilled to find a half-dead human bleeding on her favorite patch of moss. "You're lucky," she murmured, pulling a vial from somewhere in her cloak. "If the rot leeches had found you first, they'd have laid eggs in your lungs." I tried to thank her, or scream, difficult to tell which. She uncorked the vial and poured something cool and tingling over the wound in my side. It hissed. I hissed. The root I was lying on hissed too, but I think it was just being dramatic. The pain faded slightly, replaced by a strange numbness. I felt like I was floating 3 centimeters above my body. My vision blurred again, darkening at the edges. But just before I blacked out completely, she leaned close to my ear. Her breath was warm, carrying the faint scent of ozone and mint. And then she whispered my name. Not the name I used on forged ship papers or bounty lists, not the name buried in black ops reports or the ghost ID files of the Colonial Drift. My real name, the one no one was supposed to know, the one I'd cut from my own history. My eyes snapped open, but she was already standing again, already fading into the mist like a memory. The forest swallowed her up, along with whatever ghost she rode in on, and I was left there, frozen, not from fear, not from pain, but from the weight of something far heavier. Recognition. I came to with a start. Night had fallen, and the forest had changed. Where before there'd been glowing roots and whispering mist, now everything pulsed with low-frequency hums and shifting shadows. It felt like the trees were sinking to a rhythm I couldn't quite hear. Either that or my brain had finally surrendered to the ambiance. I tried to sit up and failed, then tried again and succeeded a little too enthusiastically, slamming my head into a low-hanging branch. "Oh, good," I muttered, rubbing my forehead. "A concussion. Just what I was missing. Wonder if they have a loyalty program." That's when I noticed something pressed into my chest. A leaf intricately folded into a shape, like an alien crane or a particularly fancy dinner napkin. Tucked inside was a strip of cloth. My boot tag. She'd taken it. Why? Souvenir? DNA sample? Shoe fetish? I couldn't dwell on it long. Something skittered nearby. Too fast. Too many legs. I groaned, flopped onto my back, and stared up at a sky full of unfamiliar constellations. Somewhere up there, people were probably drinking synthetic cocktails and arguing about quantum art. Me? I was bleeding in a forest full of bugs that glowed and possibly spoke Latin. But she'd said my name. That wasn't a hallucination. It couldn't be. Unless the rot leech larvae had hatched and were messing with my synapses? That'd be ironic. "I swear," I said aloud to no one, "if this ends with me marrying a long-eared forest ninja, I'm going to need a raise. Or at least a snack." And then, mercifully, unconsciousness took me again. Pain was still there when I woke up, but it had changed its personality. Less screaming, more passive-aggressive muttering. Like it knew I wasn't going to die immediately and was annoyed about it. I was lying on something soft that moved, not in the gentle, cloud-like way, but in the I might be an organic mattress and occasionally twitch way. There were vines wrapped around my limbs, but not tightly, more like a polite, restraining hug. Ambient light spilled in from the ceiling, filtered through dense layers of glowing leaves. The air smelled like fermented honey and burnt wires. I groaned. Something chirped in response. Definitely not a bird. It sounded like someone had taught a microwave how to gossip. A figure moved into view carrying a tray made of bark and what looked like sizzling meat of very questionable origin. Her again. Long silver hair now braided to one side, a few strands stuck to her cheek as she knelt beside me. Her ears twitched. "You're awake. Damn, I was 2 minutes away from declaring you decorative." I tried to sit up. My torso disagreed violently. "Easy," she said, pushing me back down with a hand that felt deceptively gentle. "Your organs were trying to unionize. I had to do some very persuasive surgery. I don't remember consenting to that. You don't remember drooling on my floor either. But here we are." The meat on the tray hissed again. I narrowed my eyes at it. "Is that food or a test?" "Both. Eat it and live. Or don't, and we'll see if the healing worms get hungry." "You're joking." She held up a clear container. Inside, 3 pale, wriggling things turned in slow circles like lazy ballet dancers. One waved a stumpy appendage at me. It might have been a threat. Or a thumbs up. I took the meat. It tasted like someone had deep-fried regret and added a hint of citrus. I ate the whole thing anyway. "Name?" she asked, sitting cross-legged beside me. "Which one?" She tilted her head. "I have a few," I said. "Depends on the crime and the planet." "You have too many teeth to be this smug," she muttered. "Start with the one you'd want written on your grave." I hesitated, then muttered the name she'd whispered in the forest. "The real one." She didn't react, just nodded. "Good. Now we can skip the dramatic confrontation where I reveal I know more than you, and you panic and try to shoot me." "Tempting," I said, "but my gun's probably being digested by a tree right now." "Oh, absolutely," she said. "I watched it melt. Scream like a little laser baby. I like that gun." "You shouldn't have named it Sparkles." There was silence for a moment. Outside the hut, I could hear the distant calls of animals that had definitely evolved under the influence of poor decisions and possible radiation. "You never told me your name," I said. "I never will." She stood brushing off her pants. Woven fabric, earth style, which meant either fashion piracy or she'd spent time among humans. She turned, smirking over her shoulder. "Call me Ayla. Everyone does, except people I have to shoot." "Nice. Sounds exotic." "It means one who tolerates idiots." "Ah. I renamed myself recently." I chuckled, then winced. Laughing still pulled on stitches somewhere deep in my liver. She moved to a panel on the wall. Not wood, metal, alien tech, half grown into the tree itself. It unfolded at her touch, lighting up with runes and glyphs that danced like they were performing for her. The interface looked alive. "This place isn't just your forest Airbnb," I said. "Nope, it's a crashed scout vessel from before your people figured out orbital hygiene. I repurposed it. Trees don't mind." "You live in a crashed ship wrapped in forest?" "Better than a studio pod with recycled air and a broken coffee synthesizer." "Touché." I watched her for a moment. She moved like someone who'd spent too much time being hunted and not enough time being believed. There was something about the way she checked the console. Habitual, careful, expecting danger at every flicker. "You knew me," I said. "Before." She didn't answer right away. "You said my name. My real name. You couldn't have found it on any registry. I made sure of that." "Registries are easy to burn," she said. "Memories aren't." Something heavy settled in the air. Then she added, "Unless you drink heavily and hit your head a lot, in which case, you're doing great." "Thanks, I pride myself on selective amnesia." She tapped a final command into the console. A low hum filled the room. Outside, several of the trees shifted subtly, their branches forming a kind of antenna array. A pulse shot up into the sky, visible even in daylight, a soft blue beam swallowed by clouds. "What was that?" I asked. "Scanner ping, trying to see who's watching this sector." "And who is?" "Someone who doesn't want you alive." "Great, can't wait to meet them. Maybe we'll hug it out." She didn't smile this time. Just walked over, sat beside me again, and pulled a small syringe from her belt. "Time for your meds," she said. "I don't trust needles." "This isn't a needle," she said. "It's a micro-injection harpoon, designed for elephantine scalefish. Hold still." I held still. The jab was fast, cold. I felt the meds spread through my bloodstream like fizzing lightning. "What was in that?" "Stuff to keep your organs from exploding when you move." "Useful. What happens if I miss a dose?" "You won't. I like having someone around who complains more than I do." I leaned back, feeling my body stabilize a little more with each passing minute. The pain was still there, but now it was a background actor. I looked at Ayla, at the long curve of her ears as they twitched toward every sound, and the glint in her eyes when she pretended not to care. "I still don't know how you knew me." "You will." "Is that a threat or a promise?" "Yes." I laughed again. This time it hurt less. Maybe the worms really were helping, or maybe I was just doomed enough to start enjoying myself. The thing about alien forests is that they don't follow Earth rules. Gravity flickers like a mood swing. Paths you swear you just walked vanish. And once I swear to every god in the Terran pantheon, a tree winked at me. I didn't even know bark could wink. Ayla walked ahead like none of this mattered. She stepped over glowing vines that recoiled at her feet, ducked under branches that curved away for her, and never once looked back to see if I'd been eaten by spontaneous root monsters. I was limping 2 steps behind, holding my side with one hand and a crude walking stick with the other, a gift she'd carved using a plasma scalpel and way too much sarcasm. "You sure this path is safe?" I asked. "Safe's a relative concept," she said, tapping her wristband. "Right now, it's only 60% likely we'll fall into a temporal sinkhole." I stopped walking. "Excuse me?" "Don't worry, we just lose an hour or two, or a kidney." She didn't wait. I sighed and followed. Whatever mystery was unfolding here, I wasn't about to solve it lying in a hut with mood lighting and medicinal parasites. We reached a ridge. Below us, the forest opened up into a clearing. Well, more like a crater, surrounded by the twisted remains of old machinery. Rusted pylons, shattered solar panels, what looked like the skeletal frame of a small transport ship embedded in a cliff. Nature had overgrown everything, but you could still see the bones of a forgotten outpost. "Welcome to what the locals once called Station 3, Ayla said. "Before the locals were eaten by something with too many mouths and not enough table manners." "Charming, let me guess." "Scavengers? Worse, researchers." She started down the slope. I nearly fell twice. The terrain had the consistency of marshmallow and betrayal. At the bottom, she waved her hand over a half-buried console. It lit up, coughing out sparks and a disgruntled noise that sounded suspiciously like a yawn. "This place is a listening post," she explained. "Long abandoned, but it still pings the ComNet every few cycles. Someone's been rerouting the signal." "To where?" "Coordinates blocked. I'd need access to a core terminal to bypass it." "Let me guess. The core terminal's guarded by angry trees, lava snakes, or a sentient spreadsheet." "Worse, bureaucracy. The terminal's in a repurposed diplomatic station." "Ugh, red tape. My mortal enemy." "Don't worry," she said. "I have an old access code. If we hit that gravity anomaly near the upper stratosphere, we might skip a few hours ahead." "That sounds bad." "Could be worse. Last time I went through it, I ended up growing an extra toe for 12 minutes. Useful? Surprisingly not." The ship rattled violently as we passed through a layer of atmospheric turbulence. Ayla didn't flinch. I, on the other hand, said a few choice words about physics and prayed to at least 4 minor space deities, possibly invented 1 or 2 midair. Eventually the shaking stopped. The stars reappeared. And there, like a forgotten sentinel, hung the observatory, half buried in an asteroid fragment, its solar panels angled awkwardly like they were trying to eavesdrop on distant conversations. Ayla docked manually, muttering complaints about the station's refusal to accept her automated handshake protocol. "Stuck-up hunk of metal, thinks it's too good for pirates." The docking seal hissed. The airlock opened. Inside was dim and cold. The lights flickered as we stepped through, casting long shadows. Somewhere deep in the station, something clicked. Mechanical, slow, deliberate. "Place has personality," I whispered. "It has mood swings," she corrected. "Don't insult the walls." A projection flickered to life in front of us. A humanoid figure made entirely of shifting pages and glowing data spirals. It regarded Ayla with a distinctly judgmental tilt of its head. "You again," it said in a monotone voice that somehow managed to sound tired. "Hello, Manus," she said sweetly. "Miss me?" "Like a rootkit. Who's the sack of meat?" "He's the reason you're being turned back on. Be polite." The AI turned to me. "Welcome biological inconvenience. Please don't bleed on the floors." "I'll do my best." I handed over the memory core. Manus extended a spectral hand, and the core floated upward, dissolving into a flurry of spinning code and sharp beeps. Processing began. The station vibrated slightly. "Was that supposed to happen?" I asked. "No," Manus replied, "but neither is your face, and here we are." I decided to stop asking questions. After a long silence punctuated by mechanical sighs and the faint sound of data being interrogated at gunpoint, Manus spoke. "This core is encrypted with a continuum-grade lock. I will need to bypass it through indirect means." "Define indirect," I said. "I will guilt the code into submission." Ayla grinned. "It works more often than you'd think." We waited. While Manus argued with ancient encryption, Ayla scavenged the control room for coffee substitutes and pretended she wasn't worried. I caught her staring at the projection screen more than once, eyes distant, as if trying to summon pieces of a life she barely remembered. "You said we worked together," I said finally. She nodded. "You and we were part of something big. Project Continuum wasn't just political, it was experimental. Temporal." She hesitated, then nodded again. "Not just memory suppression. They were testing something that bent time. Not fully, just enough to erase unwanted outcomes, to edit mistakes. Dangerous tech. World-ending tech. Why us? Because we volunteered." My brain tried to reject that. I'd never volunteered for anything that didn't involve a paycheck or a food voucher, but somewhere deep in my bones, something agreed. It fit, and that made it worse. Manus chimed in. "The core has yielded partial records. You were designated Subject Delta. Ayla was Subject Vega. Sounds ominous. Your recorded mission was contain and observe timeline divergences resulting from external interference." "What kind of interference?" "Unknown. Records are corrupted, or perhaps intentionally erased." Ayla leaned forward. "Show us what you have." A hologram spun into view. 2 figures standing in a glowing chamber. One was me, clean-shaven, younger, with eyes that hadn't yet seen this version of hell. The other was Ayla, Her ears were shorter then, less elegant, still growing maybe. We were arguing, loudly. The audio was garbled, but a phrase cut through. If they find out we kept it, we had no choice. I won't let them erase her. Then the feed ended. What did we keep? I asked. Something important, Ayla said softly. Something they didn't want surviving. Manus paused. There is one more file, heavily damaged, but it references a location. Echo point. Where is that? In a fold space. Off map. You'll need a phase key. Ayla's eyes lit up. I know where to find one. Of course she did. We turned to leave, but Manus stopped us. From your ambassador days? From my sneaky days. Ah. While she worked the console, I wandered. Bad habit. The clearing felt wrong, like the air had texture, and it was brushing against my face in Morse code. Something shimmered in the corner of my eye, and when I turned, it was gone. I found a symbol carved into one of the pylons, a circle with an arrow through it, surrounded by 5 stars. My chest tightened. Hey, I said, this is... I know. She was beside me now, watching the symbol too. This was the continuum emblem. You remember. Only pieces. They fade in and out like cheap dreams. She looked at me for a long moment. You and I, she said softly, we were part of something before it burned. They made us forget, erased timelines, rewrote files, but they missed things. Like names, like connections. I reached out and touched the symbol. My fingers tingled. The pylon responded, humming a low ancient note. And then, another sound. Not technological, not mechanical. Footsteps. We turned together, instantly alert. A figure stepped from the tree line. Human, or at least, mostly. He wore scavenger gear patched with corporate armor, and his eyes glowed faintly with implanted optics. Hello again, he said, raising a hand. Ayla cursed under her breath. Voss! Still hanging out with pretty fugitives, I see, Voss said. Didn't peg you for the nostalgic type. I stepped forward. You know him? He tried to shoot me once. Missed. Twice, Voss said cheerfully. Second time was a graze. Very dignified. What do you want? Ayla asked. A chat, a trade, a reminder. He pulled something from his pack and tossed it to the ground between us. It landed with a soft thud. A memory core. Old pre-war. My breath caught. Where did you get that? Found it in the wreck of a ship registered to someone named... Oh, what was it? Ah, yes. You. Ayla stepped between us. Why bring it here? Because someone's offering credits, big ones, for your location. But me, I'm nostalgic. I wanted to see if you'd actually show up. You always were a sucker for drama, she muttered. Voss grinned. Says the woman who lives in a haunted forest with glowing parasites. Don't be jealous. You couldn't handle my parasites. I cleared my throat. If you're not going to kill us, maybe hand over the core. He chuckled. Oh, I'm not going to kill you. But someone will. Soon. I've sent out a signal. You've got maybe an hour before this place gets crowded. With that, he turned and walked back into the trees, humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like the Terran anthem played backwards. I looked at Ayla. What now? She picked up the core. Now we run and hope this has what I think it does. Clues? Worse. Don't say bureaucracy again. Memories. We didn't wait. We climbed. Fast. The forest pulsed around us as if it too had heard the signal and wasn't pleased. Ayla tapped her wristband. Calling in a favor. From who? A guy who owes me a ship and a kidney. Not in that order. A buzzing sound echoed behind us. I really hope that's your ride and not a swarm of angry nanobees. It's both. I started running faster. She laughed. I did not. The ship was a patchwork of mismatched panels, exposed wiring, and sounds that no engine should legally be allowed to make. When it landed, it coughed blue smoke. One of its thrusters sparked like a firework having an identity crisis, and its gangplank lowered with the kind of screech that suggested metal was experiencing an existential breakdown. Ayla slapped the side of it fondly. Home sweet death trap. You stole this, didn't you? I liberated it. The previous owner exploded. I feel so reassured. We didn't have time to debate flight safety regulations. The buzzing was getting closer, and unless we wanted to get hugged to death by drone swarms, we needed altitude. Now. Ayla shoved the memory core into my hands and climbed into the pilot seat like she owned the stars. I strapped in behind her, glancing at a console covered in warning stickers, half of which were written in languages I couldn't identify, and one that simply said, "Do not lick." The ship groaned as it lifted off. Something clanged against the undercarriage on the way up. I decided not to ask. "Destination?" I shouted over the rising hum of the engines. "Old observatory. High orbit. It's off-grid, but it still has a working AI core." "You're trusting in AI?" "This one owes me a favor, and its personality is based on a retired librarian. It's only mildly homicidal." The forest below shrank quickly. I watched the glowing trees blur together until they became a sea of twitching green light. Then the clouds swallowed us, and the temperature dropped. I looked down at the memory core in my lap. It hummed faintly, warm through the casing, like it recognized me. I didn't know whether to be flattered or terrified. "How long until we get to the observatory?" "Depends. One warning," it said. "You are not the only ones who remember. Others survived. Some changed. Some hunt." "Thanks for the pep talk," I said. "Die loudly," Manus replied. We boarded the ship again. Next stop, Echo Point. And possibly everything we were never meant to remember. We dropped into fold space like a coin into a cosmic vending machine, violently and with no refunds. The stars blinked out, replaced by shifting geometry that didn't obey perspective. Up wasn't a direction anymore. Neither was down. Ayla didn't seem concerned. She piloted like she was driving through a fog bank on her homeworld, calm as quantum turbulence swirled around us. "You know, most people would scream during this part," I said, clutching my seat. "Most people don't have inner ear implants," she replied. "You still scream like someone stole your snack bar." "Because someone did steal my snack bar. You crashed a ship into a forest. Snacks are for survivors." She keyed in the final coordinates, and the ship tilted. Echo Point emerged like a half-finished memory, a sphere of fractured time suspended in the void, its surface rippling with golden light. It pulsed once as we approached, as if it recognized us. "This is it," she said. "You ready?" "No," I said, "but I've done dumber things with less information." She smirked. "That's the spirit." We docked on a platform that shouldn't exist. The moment we stepped out, time bent. Literally. Our shadows duplicated, overlapped, aged, and then vanished. My reflection in a nearby panel looked 10 years older and considerably more tired. The chamber ahead was waiting for us, circular, massive, its walls covered in dormant conduits that glowed as we entered. In the center stood a column of light with something inside. A sphere, small, floating, and pulsing to the same rhythm as my heartbeat. Ayla stepped forward, eyes fixed on the object. "That's it," she whispered. "That's what we saved." "What is it?" "Not what, who." The light dimmed just enough for me to see. Inside the sphere was a figure, female, young. Her features were strangely familiar. Not human, not exactly like Ayla either. Somewhere in between. I looked at Ayla. "She's mine," Ayla said. "Ours." Everything hit me at once. The erased memories, the mission we'd buried, the argument in the recording. "You kept her from them," I said. "We both did," she nodded. "She was born of two timelines. A convergence. The continuum labeled her an anomaly. Something to be erased." "And we hid her here," I said. "In a fold between folds." She touched the sphere. It responded, shifting open like a blooming flower. The girl inside opened her eyes, black with golden rings, just like Ayla's. "Hi," she said, voice clear, curious. "Are you my parents?" Ayla blinked. I choked. "I mean, not biologically," I started. "But emotionally? Existentially?" Ayla offered. "Yes," I said finally. "Yes, we are." The girl smiled. "Cool. I was starting to get bored." The sphere dissolved. She floated gently down, feet touching the ground. She looked around, eyes soaking in every shifting wall and swirling equation etched into the chamber. "Do I have a name?" she asked. Ayla hesitated, then looked at me. I shrugged. "We're already fugitives. Why not let her name herself?" The girl grinned. Okay, then I want to be called Nova. Nova it is, Ayla said. Starborn, chaos-infused, unpredictable. Like her parents, I added. Nova turned toward the door. So what now? Are people going to come after us? Yes, Ayla said. Definitely, I added. Nova thought about this. Can we blow them up? Ayla beamed with maternal pride. Absolutely. We left the chamber. The station began to shake as the timeline tried to adjust. I felt memories snapping back into place like puzzle pieces finding their way home. I remembered her. I remembered everything. The mission, the fear, the sacrifice, and why we did it. I wasn't just a runaway anymore. I was a protector, a builder of futures. We reached the ship. Ayla handed me the pilot controls. Me, I said. You've grown, she replied, and I'd like to see if you've learned how not to crash. No promises, I muttered, but I took the seat anyway. Nova sat between us, humming a tune she probably hadn't heard from any universe we knew. Where to now? I asked. Anywhere, Ayla said. Everywhere, Nova added. I fired up the engine. The stars opened up in front of us, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost.